Hey everyone. Now, as we all know, when we look at the animal kingdom and reptiles, amphibians, inverts, the herpetiles in general, they're really weird, diverse, and all over the place. Now, as us humans, we like to make everything fit in neat little boxes because it makes it easier for us to kind of process things and figure out how stuff works. However, in nature, there's no such thing as a right angle, and especially with herpetiles. In fact, the phrase, all these squares make a circle, is probably a little bit more accurate. So today I want to talk about 5 different herpetiles that in fact are, in general, rule breakers. So, to get things started, we're actually going to talk about a species of invertebrate. Now, this is actually a species of spider. In the world of spiders, they're very kind of odd. They're very diverse. There's a bunch of different ones out there. But in general, they're usually arboreal or terrestrial invertebrates, right? Well, as it turns out, there are a few arachnids out there that are a little bit more closer related to water, like the fishing spiders and different species of spiders that actually interact and even hunt in and under the water. And even that is pretty uncommon. And even more rare than that are marine versions of those. There are, in fact, very few different spider species that are marine or interacting with sea or salt or even brackish water to an extent. It's kind of a gray area in there, which makes them a rarity among rarities. And that's the first one that we're going to talk about is actually Desis bobmarlii. Now, you heard that right, and we're going to get into that. Now, back in 2017, this species of marine spider was first discovered along the shores of northern Queensland, right? Now, for us Americans out there, this basically looks like an incredibly scary version of the woodlouse spider, although some woodlouse subspecies can actually even get a little bit larger than bobmarlii. Now, these guys are not unheard of when it comes to marine spiders, but they are a little bit unique even amongst them. So essentially, these guys are considered a fully marine intertidal species. Fully marine means that they're marine animals. That doesn't mean they spend all of their time in water, i.e. seals and sea lions, right? And then the intertidal basically refers to the fact that they live in several different tide zones, and their periods of activity correlate with the high and low tide. So if you were to go out and look around for little holes, essentially, you would actually see little silk-lined trapdoors that actually sit, not trapdoors, but there's these little silk-lined burrows that kind of act as like a barrier during high tide. When the tide comes in, the water level goes up. That silk kind of barrier protects the water from going into the burrows. Tide goes out, water level drops down. Bobmarlii comes out and actually hunts for more than just invertebrates, but actually for some small species of fish. Really, really cool. And yes, you are correct. This was named after the absolutely phenomenal reggae singer and songwriter Bob Marley, basically named after the really good song High Tide, Low Tide. Next up is one that I've actually covered fairly recently. This is the fly river turtle, or the pig-nosed turtle. They are a freshwater species of turtle that inhabits the water systems of parts of northern Australia, the Northern Territory, and into parts of Papua New Guinea. In fact, the largest river in New Guinea is actually where they get the name, Fly River, otherwise the pig nose. Now, these guys are actually breaking 2 different rules, right? So the first one is that the fly river turtle is the only species of freshwater turtle that has flippers. And if you want to get a more in-depth one about these guys, I'll try to remember to put the link for the fly river turtle right here. You can check out the species spotlight on them. It's a really, really cool little turtle that I got to play with that day. And then that all the other species of marine turtles have flippers. All freshwater turtles, so all the terrapins, the sliders, the pond turtles, box turtles, they all actually have feet. They're shaped a little bit differently. They're not quite as aerodynamic as most of the marine turtles. A little bit more spread out. They're almost like really big, widespread fingers that are very webbed, but they do have flippers versus feet, which is super, super weird. And the other which actually breaks the other rule of soft-shell turtles. Now, most of the time you think of a turtle, you think of that bony carapace, that shell. But soft-shell turtles don't actually have that. They have kind of a leathery skin and a big bony plate instead of individual pieces of bone that interlock in there. It's just a solid flat plate, and that leathery kind of skin, tough skin sits on top of that. Well, the fly river turtle does in fact have that tough leathery skin on there. It's pretty soft to the touch, but they have a domed shell or carapace like other species of land turtle or box turtle as well. So really, really interesting. It's a 2-time rule breaker. They're going back to Folsom. Let's be honest here with these guys. They're really, really cool. They're omnivorous. They're highly intelligent, very, very curious. And as it turns out, a lot of freshwater turtles are usually the ones that are most actively seen as far as reptile species go in captivity that shows complex behavior, specifically playing behavior. Really, really cool. Next, it would be really weird if I did a video that didn't include snakes, right? And that's exactly what this next one is. Although this one isn't one that you can really keep as a pet. This is the mountain pit viper. These guys are relatively small, usually not exceeding lengths of 3.5 feet in length, found in usually montane regions, parts of India, Myanmar, parts of China, and Thailand. Now, these guys are a very unique, odd little species of viper. There's usually, again, with the whole box thing that we like to have for the different reptile species out there. So, most pit vipers, they have those hinged fangs. Mountain pit viper has that as well. A lot of the more famous ones have little rattles or kind of oddly shaped tails. Don't really have that, though, on this one, but that's not necessarily breaking rules. And then, most vipers are actually vivarious, which means that they actually give live birth, or they're ovoviviparous, which means eggs develop, the eggs hatch, and then live babies come out of mom. But the mountain pit viper actually lays eggs and sits on the eggs, which is really weird. However, there are even other species of viper, not in the same genus, but inhabit the same kind of area of the world, such as the mangash viper, I think I'm saying that correctly, the one that's very rare, much, much larger. They also lay eggs, as well does the South American bushmaster. They also lay eggs. So, interesting, definitely rule-breaking, but they have some partners in crime. In addition to that, they're also more active during periods of cooler times of the year. Most vipers are active in what would the equivalent of our spring, summer, into early fall season. So for the Northern Hemisphere, specifically for North America, the United States, it's kind of like April through November with varying degrees on those sides. In other parts of the world, it kind of flips around a little bit, but that's their periods of activities. The mountain pit viper, as it turns out, are actually more active longer during cooler periods of time and are actually more inactive during the warmer periods. But again, that is kind of breaking that rule, but the mangash viper as well also lives in montane regions, is more active in cooler periods of time. So again, they have an accomplice on that one. The thing that makes them, that's extra super kind of weird about this, is that while they are a venomous pit viper, and while we're not 100% sure on the actual toxicity level of their venom, they assume there's been only one recorded death of the mountain pit viper, so we need to treat it very seriously if we're going to go out hiking in the mountains of parts around like Hong Kong and areas around Thailand and Myanmar. However, the weird thing about these guys is actually their hunting behavior. Again, venomous pit viper, so they do deliver the venom via those front-facing hinged fangs, but they have been documented on more than one occasion and actually constricting their prey, which is super, super weird. There's actually several species of venomous snakes that exhibit different behavior that we normally wouldn't assume with them. For instance, the wrinkles cobra has actually been known to play dead the same way like a hognose does, although it is actually a highly venomous elapid. Usually you don't see them grabbing and wrapping up their prey. If they're a smaller prey item and it's a larger animal like a big gaboon or a king cobra, they will sometimes grab and not let go and work into that prey item, but you very rarely see them wrap up. And so that's what makes the mountain pit viper exceptionally odd and definitely a rule breaker, because they're an egg-laying viper, they're active during cold periods, and they will, not always, but they will constrict their prey in addition to being a venomous pit viper. Super, super weird, and definitely a rule breaker. Next up is another group of spiders. I know, it's a really spider-heavy video on this one, and I'm going to do my best to not butcher some of these words, so we'll see how it goes. But there is a genus of, or family of spiders out there that's called Uloboridae, and these guys are actually non-venomous spiders. Now, I imagine that a lot of us have heard the term, oh, they're not poisonous or they're not venomous. And that's not to say that something like a wolf spider, well, yes, it has venom. It is capable of biting. It just isn't necessarily one that is causing a medically significant bite. For instance, such as like a city funnel web, Brazilian wandering spider, black widow, brown recluse. That type of spider. No, these Uloboridae spiders physically do not have venom glands. They're also sometimes referred to as the Uloboridae orb weavers. And again, I apologize, this is the word right here. I know I messed up, and there's an actual real reason why they refer to them as such. Now, these guys, they're actually very widespread. There's quite a few species in this family, and they're spread across most of the world. However, there are two different species that are most commonly interacted with and documented. One of which that's almost the only one that lives in a lot of parts of Europe, so go figure where a lot of people are, and there is really only one with a couple subspecies in North America. Again, where most people are, go figure that's the one that's seen the most. But these orb weavers are really cool, and again, they don't have venom glands, so you're probably wondering, how do they eat their food? Well, they utilize very similar things that a lot of other orb weaving or web building spiders will do. The prey item will get caught in their web, and they will use their web to wrap it up, and then, instead of injecting venom and digestive fluids into them and then eating it afterwards, they basically just coat the animal in, or the prey item, whatever may have you, in that digestive fluid on top of the webbed up prey item, and then they will start to eat it that way. And in fact, it's been seen on more than one occasion where they will entirely just kind of dump on top of it and then immediately start eating even before it really has time to really sit there and work on it. So really, really odd group of spiders out there. Now, the really kind of odd thing about these guys is that cribolite, or at least I'm pretty sure I'm saying that correctly, again, I apologize if I'm not, is that's the reason why they're called that. Their webbing, the silk that comes out of their spinnerets, isn't really sticky like traditional spinnerets. It's actually, they have very, 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 very tiny microfibers that actually create an electrostatic shock and cling. Not shock, but cling. So it's through static electricity that it hears stuff. So, you rub the balloon and it sticks to something. It's that, but on a tiny, tiny level. And their spinnerets are actually shaped a little bit differently, so where it comes out and it actually creates this kind of almost fuzzy looking sometimes kind of web silk that comes out, and that's actually what's used to actually cling to their prey. And they also don't really have a standard kind of set web pattern. Depending on the species, and even in the same species, it can vary quite a bit to just a single strand, and because of that static electro kind of grippy clinginess, that's all they'll need, to where they'll make one that looks more like a traditional kind of web, to one that's even sometimes referred to as a messy web. So if you ever watched the movie Arachnophobia and you saw those just like hordes of different spider webs all in like the corners of the barn and stuff, that's what they'll actually make. And there's even been some documentation of some species being communal, where some species of both subadults, juveniles, and adults will all be living together, and they'll all kind of actively use each other's webs. It's really, really cool. So there is, in fact, one type of spider out there that is truly not harmful to humans because they are non-venomous. Super, super weird. Last up is actually a family of skinks that are found in New Guinea and the Solomon Islands that, in all honesty, almost are like something out of a bad 90s monster movie, horror movie. These different types of skinks, normally they're called the green skink, and there are several other species out there. There's about 5 or 6, depending on who you want to fight with, that are actually super, super weird. Every skink in this family, and this isn't the emerald tree skink, this is the green tree skink and other different families. That one's an entirely separate genus. Every skink in this family of animals has incredibly large amounts of a green bile pigment called biviridin. I think that's how you pronounce it. Here it is. We all know how bad I am at this, right? Don't give me too much of a hard time about it, all right? Now, they have so much of it that it physically turns their muscles, their blood, their bones, even their tongues green. These are the green-blooded skinks. Super, super weird. There are other animals that have large amounts of this bile pigment out there. They're actually somewhat well known in other areas. There are actually different species of green-blooded fish. But in the case of the green-blooded skinks, they are sometimes more than 3 times higher level than those green-blooded fish. It's absolutely crazy. Scientists aren't 100% sure why they have so much of it, but there's a couple different theories out there, and some of them, the prevailing one, may think that it has to do with malaria. Now, malaria, we all know it's an absolutely terrible disease, and a lot of the parasites that are found in malaria, or that can carry malaria, I should say, are found in the areas where these animals come from. And they can, in fact, latch onto and infect different species, not just humans. They can infect reptiles and other animals as well. And there's another substance that's actually created in a liver that's almost identical to that of this bile pigment that kills malaria parasites and malaria positive cells. So they think that potentially this excess of this bile pigment may help in aiding warding off these malaria parasites to keep them from getting sick, as well as the fact that a lot of patients that are jaundiced, or when essentially they go into renal failure, which has to do with their kidneys and sometimes the liver and yada yada yada. This isn't a medical podcast or video, all right? They lack a lot of this bile pigment, and so they also see that this lizard would essentially never have jaundice issues, which could be another thing about that. They're just a really, really weird group of lizards that as not warm-blooded, but as vertebrates, that almost every single one has red blood through oxygenation and of all of that other stuff. These guys, in fact, have green bloods. Maybe they hitched a ride with the invaders from Mars. I don't really know. But hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Sorry I kind of fumbled there a little bit at the end. It's hard to mix my parents were medical people, so mixing my history brain, my reptile brain, and my medical brain, it all kind of fumbled there a little bit. But hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. It's really cool to learn about and research these kind of weird, oddball, just odd little reptiles and to share it with all of you. If you guys enjoyed today's video, please like, subscribe, share with your friends. We're getting really close to 5K subscribers, in which case once we hit that 5K, we're going to do a full property tour. It's getting really close to winter time. It's a lot better to do that during the summer, so either let's hit it in the next week or two, or it's may have to wait. Even if we hit it while winter, it may have to wait until after it kind of defrosts a little bit so I can really kind of show you everything. Otherwise, you're going to see what essentially a farm looks like in winter, all right? But again, please share it with all your friends. I really, really appreciate it. Hopefully, again, you guys enjoyed today's video. If you want to check out the other top 5 playlist, here it is here at the end of all the different videos. Really helps my click-through rates. Helps the algorithm with YouTube. However, they like to not like their creators. It does say that, hey, you are liking this stuff, we're going to keep you on his page, and we're going to keep suggesting their content, which really helps me out as I'm trying to do it full time. So, again, thank you all so much. Hope you're having a great day, and we'll check you next time.